Hi, everyone, and welcome. So nice to see you and to be here with you. I am Karyn Skultety. I am the Executive Director of Openhouse, and thanks for joining us for a town hall. We have some folks joining us by Zoom, some folks joining us through Facebook Live. So hello to all. Feel free to ask questions if you're on the Zoom by using the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, and just feel free to type your questions in there. If you're watching on Facebook and you have a question, feel free to put your question in the comments and they will send it over to me via the magical chat or text or some virtual something. It will magically appear before me. It's wonderful to be here with everyone. We have folks kind of slowly joining us, so I'll give it just a minute here for people to get connected and to join us in this modern venue. I will just say for me that while we're really thrilled that Zoom programming and virtual programming is reaching folks, it does not come close to the experience for me of getting to be in a room with all of you together having these conversations. So it's wonderful to have you here. It's wonderful to be together, and just know how deeply I miss being in a room with each and every one of you, whether it's one-on-one or in a large group having a party or getting ready for a fall feast, which is what we would have been doing a year ago. It's just really, it's a very, very different time, and I recognize that. I do want to let everybody know this is being done in a webinar format, so that means I don't get to see your faces, but part of the reason for that is this is being recorded. We know that 12 to 1 wasn't going to work for everyone, and we also know that joining by Zoom or Facebook might not work for folks, but sometimes watching a video afterwards is a more effective way for some folks and works better for their schedule. So this is being recorded, and so that's part of the reason only my slightly tired face is appearing on the screen. But no questions that you asked will be, if you're on the Zoom call, no questions you ask will be connected to your name or anything like that. So so feel free to ask questions, and we will share and answer them here. I think what I'll do is sort of the typical town hall format that I've done in the past when we've done these town halls, which is I'm going to talk just for a few minutes. We'll keep it to 10 or less, just on kind of the state of Open House at this time. How are we doing? What does the programming look like? And what are we thinking as we look down the road here a bit in terms of our operations and programming for the next 3 to 6 months. And I can talk a little bit about that. And then I just want to make plenty of time for questions or for things that you may want to hear me talk or share about. So let me start with that. And then, like I said, please feel free to start putting questions into the Q&A box on the Zoom or into the comments section on Facebook. Yeah, I'll just start by saying, again, what I said in the beginning, because folks are sort of coming on now, just to acknowledge that this is an incredibly challenging time, both with COVID, but also everything that's going on in the world and across the nation, the election that we have coming up here in a couple of weeks. And so it's just been a very difficult time to hold a lot of things at once. And I just want to say that I could not be prouder or more inspired by the way that Open House staff, the Open House board, the volunteers, the community members we serve, the way that folks have just come together and that we've all pulled on our resources of being adaptive, being creative, being resilient to figure out what do we need to do in this moment. And my staff know this, my board know this, those of you who have gotten a chance to chat with me one-to-one know this. I really strongly believe that organizations who are going to do well in this time and get through this time with grace and with dignity and with strong finances are going to be those that are able to continue to adapt and change as the circumstances change with this pandemic, with the world, with where we are in this moment. And so I'm very proud of the way that Open House was able to quickly go from being a very on-site, very in-person organization to being a all work from home, primarily work from home, primarily phone and virtual intervention organization. I'm proud that we didn't have a single day where we weren't open. I'm proud that we found a way to get staff working from home and that we have staff who are patient and persistent, and we're dealing with things like us not having enough laptops and computers and equipment and the server set up the right way, right? These are some practical things that small nonprofits face, that we faced early on, but we were able to overcome those challenges. And then we've just been improving in terms of our technology, our equipment, our access, our setup, supports for staff at home over this period of time. So I just want to say that our kind of mantra and the thing we're coming back to as a staff over and over again in this time is, where are we now? What are the needs? How can we meet them safely, quickly, effectively? And what do we need to change for the next 4 weeks and the 4 weeks after that and the 4 weeks after that? And so again, I'm just very, very grateful for that kind of mindset and way of thinking. There have been times that we've started something and then we've said, gosh, that's not working. And staff have just been like, let's reboot, let's try it again, let's do it a different way. So just my deep appreciation for that perspective. And the same goes with the community and the seniors that we're serving. You've been great about saying, hey, this worked, this Zoom isn't working, we need more support this way. How can we change the way that we're doing this? And being willing to respond and say, can we try again? And again, that kind of thinking, that way of approaching what we're doing, I think is a real strength of this organization, and is a real strength of this community, and has allowed us to do things quickly and make adaptations. So with that, what do things look like right now? What is Open House doing? When we say Open House is open and running every single day, what does that mean? What does that look like? So since the very beginning of the shelter in place in San Francisco, Open House started doing support calls out to the community to check in, to see if people had things that they needed, but also just to let everyone know, we're here, we're connected, we're with you in this time. We continue those emotional support calls. We've done thousands and thousands of calls in the last 6 months. And if you're not getting one of those calls and you'd like to have a call, we are ready, staffed, both with staff and a huge volunteer pool to be able to provide you with support calls and connection. So you can call the main number and say, hey, I'm not getting those calls. If you know someone in your life, a friend, chosen family, the person you run into at the store when you're, shopping for milk, and that person is an LGBTQ senior, we would be happy to make those calls as well. So that's a big part of our work, is that ongoing connection. I'll be here next week. We'll be here. We'll talk again. We'll see how things are. In addition, we have our resource and housing navigation team, which is they're the really deep service experts and housing experts, right? They're the ones right now to say, okay, what service are you looking for? Okay, what's actually open during COVID, right? What's functioning? How do we get you eligible for different food programs that are happening across the city? What's the current state of affordable housing in San Francisco, and how can we get you on some of the lists? Yes, there's still housing that's opening. Yes, there's still ways to apply. And so that whole team is also doing their work both by phone, but also virtual housing workshops and virtual meetings as we need it to help get people and through the navigation, the resource and housing navigation that they need. Our case managers, both our resident case manager, Ashling, who's on site, and Amy, who's our community case manager, also coming on site, are doing case management. Again, a lot of it is phone work. There is some in-person work that's being done there as people need it to be navigating this time. In addition, we have, like many organizations, really expanded our virtual Zoom programming, everything from support groups to language classes, to social classes, cooking classes. We have a whole range of really cool virtual programming going on. And here's the thing. There's a lot of folks who cannot reach or be connected through virtual programming. We know there are people without equipment. We know there's people without consistent Wi-Fi. And we know that technology skills, my 10-year-old and 7-year-old are way ahead of me on technology skills. So, I just tell them they've had a lot more practice than I've had. So we're all still learning technology skills to be able to access those programs. But we have a lot available and a lot going on. And again, I'm proud of the staff's creativity, the working with community. What do we most need? What are folks looking for? An ability to be available that way. The other thing that we really shifted into and we've really increased in this time is around food. So one of the things I've talked a lot about that COVID did, and other executive directors and folks in senior services are certainly doing this as well, is that COVID exposed where our system was already frayed, right? It exposed places that the system of care or the safety net of care was already had some cracks or was pulling, and it opened holes. And one of the big areas, the number one area that DOS, as they collected calls from everyone in those first 3 to 4 months from seniors, what were they looking for, is food security. What we found out is that a lot of folks were coming to the various senior centers and senior programs across the city that offered food, and that was part of their plan to have enough food across the course of the week. When those programs closed, when there wasn't those lunches and the drop-in food opportunities that were happening regularly at the senior centers, a lot of people found themselves without enough food. And we're so grateful for the incredible work Meals on Wheels and Project Open Hand and so many other food providers, 30th Street Meal Program, all of those have stepped up, and the demand just far exceeded what was possible and available. And so Openhouse stepped up in a couple of ways. One is through our volunteer matching with Mona Me. We have volunteers who can go out and do grocery shopping for folks, because part of it is the access to food and being able to actually get food into your home. But we also expanded with the food bank. So Openhouse is now delivering about 100 bags of home delivered groceries to people in the community and in our building every single week, so that those folks don't have to worry, am I going to have enough food? And that was, again, a big expansion of services for us, a shift in what we had been doing. But, it's one of those things for me that there's no question on whether you do that or not. That is absolutely the next step in what we need to do. So we've really expanded food provision. Again, if you're someone who needs food, you're finding that you're not making it through the week with enough food, please call. We've got more spots in that program. And we can set you up with home delivered groceries. We want to make sure that folks have enough to eat. We know it's tough to get to the grocery stores right now still. And we've got capacity to be able to expand that. The final thing that we're doing, we did in June, and we're ramping up again for November, December. We really think that, we can't bring the entire community together to us the way that we had been in the past. And so we're really thinking about, how do we bring community to you? And so in June, we delivered about 600 Pride bags across San Francisco to folks who are regularly engaging with us through those phone calls, through our virtual programming. And the Pride bags have all kind of cool stuff in them. But honestly, I had the honor of getting to deliver a few of those Pride bags. And I think just that moment of getting to stand 10 feet apart at your door and be able to look at you and say the thing I most want everyone to hear today, which is, we miss you, you matter, we care about you, you are part of our community, we love you, and we're here even though we can't all be together. That moment in June was incredibly meaningful for the staff, for volunteers, and for the seniors that we connected with. And so our plan is, with the holidays coming, we'll do that again. We'll do holiday sort of baskets out to folks across November and December. The nice thing is we won't try and condense it all into 2 days like we did for Pride, but we'll spread that out. And again, at least once a quarter, we're trying to figure out ways that we can bring community to you, to be at your door as a volunteer or staff member, and drop off a few goodies, but also just say, I see you, I miss you, you are a part of our community. Because that continues to be true. And we know that we got to keep saying that to each other over and over and over again. So that kind of gives you the breadth of the programming that we're doing at this time. I am getting some questions, although it hasn't been a lot, but please, I've got you here today, so please feel free to voice this here or after. I'm always happy to chat with folks. I am starting to get some questions about, will Open House, are we going to rush to resume on-site programming now that San Francisco is opening, some more restaurants for indoor dining, and bowling alleys, I think, are opening. Nothing against bowling alleys, they're fantastic, but and so I think there's been a question of, will we start to do on-site programming? At this time, we have no plans to do on-site programming before the end of this calendar year. Absolutely no. In early January, I'm willing to evaluate and take a look at it again. I just want to say that I think, and you're all holding this with me, we're holding this together. We're holding an incredibly difficult contradiction, right? Which is, on the one hand, we're seeing cities say, let's open this and let's try opening that, and let's try having people eat outside and see what that's like, right? While at the same time, the Department of Public Health and the CDC have not changed their recommendation for vulnerable populations. They are still recommending, if you are over 60, if you are someone who is immune compromised, the recommendation is still to stay at home as much as you possibly can. Now, that's incredibly difficult. That is driving isolation for people over 60 and people who are immune compromised in all kinds of ways. That is incredibly detrimental. And we're aware of that and doing everything we can to intervene and, again, say we are connected even when we're not in the same room. But I know that it's very difficult. And so at this point, for me to recommend social programming on site and ask people to take that risk, and to shift our focus from that, which would shift it a bit away from reaching people at home, doesn't feel like the right decision at this time. Will we continue to reevaluate it? Absolutely. Are we continuing to think creatively? Absolutely. Am I personally incredibly worried that while San Francisco's numbers are very low, the rest of the country is skyrocketing and we can't put San Francisco in a bubble? I am worried about that. So again, if we see January that San Francisco has remained low, we will evaluate this. We will then let you know what it looks like. We're not going to rush to roll anything out, because we're only going to roll things out that we feel really confident that we can be safe with. One of the things that we have done limited in person is, if there's an urgent housing or service situation, we're finding a way to be responsive to that. Whether that's in person, whether that's going with someone to a housing interview, whether that's figuring out how to help someone get to a doctor's appointment, right? Like, we are here and ready to help. But the risk of on-site services at this time and at this point, and with the recommendations, particularly for people in a vulnerable population, are not one that are going to have us do a lot of social group kind of things on site. We are evaluating with our partners at Unlock, who are able, to have medical level care with their doctors and nurses, whether we would be able to serve a very small number of people who are becoming at risk for nursing home placement through our partnership program with Unlock. Again, none of that would operate either until 2021, and it would be a very, very small, limited number of people. So that's kind of where we're at. I went about 10, I went a few more than 10, but I want to stop there and open it up for questions. And I'm going to just take a quick peek here in the Q&A. Great. So I have two questions. The first is, after the COVID crisis ends, many seniors will still be confined to our homes. Absolutely. Will Open House continue to reach out to these seniors with Zoom programs? And then the other question, I'm just going to read them both so I can then move this white square off my face. Thanks for commenting on the future of live programming. Can you articulate a little bit more about what's going on for the folks living in the residence, so in the housing? And are you able to share any info on whether there's a COVID outbreak at 55 or 95? Okay, keep asking questions. I'm gonna close this and answer those three. So the first question was, there's people who, even after the, thanks, Fair's telling me you can't see the white square, which is good. Only I could see it on my face. there are folks who after the COVID crisis will still be at home, and can we continue Zoom programming? And I think the answer to that is, one of the things that we've said over and over again is, if living through this experience and being a nonprofit who's doing the work that we do doesn't change us, if this experience doesn't change us forever, if it doesn't make us rethink every way that we've done programming, every way that we've done outreach, every way that we've connected and not connected to people, I think we're missing the point. So yes, my answer is, I think we've learned a lot about how we can reach people at home who weren't coming into open house programming before, or were having to miss a lot of open house programming before because of limited transportation, or because of health conditions, or because of a whole lot of different things that people were facing way before any of this started. And I think we're learning about ways we can connect that are really powerful while people are at home. And for us to not take that in and let that change us forever as an organization would be very silly of us. And I don't like to be silly. So the answer is yes. And actually, I'll just say that the new community center, actually we purposefully, having a moment of, I don't know, clairvoyance or something, we purposely set up that room with multiple cameras in the room, and the ability for those cameras to easily connect to Zoom. And ultimately, we still have some of the technological programming on this. Ultimately, we actually want to be able to live stream directly onto the Open House website the programming that's happening in our large activity room. So you can imagine a year from now, 2 years from now, we're having big parties again. Yes, it is. We will be there someday, guys, I promise. And you can actually imagine that you could be at the party in person, but you could also be live streaming into the party and hear me give some dumb speech, or watch the LGBTQ royalty contest live stream. And so the good news is, technologically, we're really set up with some equipment for the future that will allow us to do this. But the answer also is, like, we've learned a lot about how powerful this kind of programming can be. And so why wouldn't we continue to use that? The second question about how's it going in our housing and for our residents. I can't share any specific information on any one person within the residence, and I'm protective of their privacy. But I will say that we have not, at least that we are aware of, and we're doing very, very frequent checks, we have not had any cases of COVID within the residence at our two buildings. And we are very fortunate that we have the relationship that we have with Mercy Housing, because we have really, really strong protocols and procedures in place that if there was someone to test positive and the resident reported that to us, we would very quickly be able to put into action steps, both that would help people get tested, as well as quarantine, as well as have support. So I'll just tell you, my own fear was, especially early on in March, there was such limited testing available that my concern was, if someone tested positive, would we be able to quickly have testing, which is essential in that kind of situation. And I just want to say thanks to everyone, including the residents who have just worked with us and been willing to really follow the rules and limit visitors and do a lot of stuff that's really fucking hard, to be honest. To make sure that we didn't have that happen, and continue to work with us on ensuring we made sure flu shots were available. We're doing a lot to make sure that we're safe, and we're prepared if we were in that scenario to act quickly. And we have good support from Mercy and from DOS and from MOHCD on all of those protocols. Those are the kinds of things in the beginning, to be honest, that weren't set up, I think, at a systems level, that now are in place, that allow us to have more support as an individual provider. So that's where we're at this point with residents. We were able, and I hope folks saw it in the Chronicle, we actually hosted a live drag show at the apartments in our big open courtyard that people could watch either through the windows, or some folks came and were 20 plus feet away and were able to see the performers. We did that in May for Harvey Milk's birthday. And that's something we're looking at again, is what kind of live distanced program could residents watch from their windows. We do have a number of residents who technology is quite limited for. And again, we're working on how do we increase technology access for seniors across the city. And I'm not working on that alone. That's a senior provider issue that's being worked on broadly. I've really been encouraging people to think about sort of super hotspots on affordable housing buildings that everybody could access. Again, just to increase the number of people with that access to Zoom and to online programming, not just from Open House. There's a lot of really great online Zoom programming happening at Open House, and there's a lot happening in the community. And again, it kind of shuts you off from the world if you don't have access for that. Let me just open this. How are donors responding? Great question. Thank you for that. Let me see the other one. What steps are we taking to help Open House members acquire technology for the internet? Great. So I'll talk to donors and then I can go back and talk about technology. Appreciate that question. First of all, I want to say that I'm very proud to say, and I say this really, it's not about me, it's really about the team and about the Open House board and about the entire Open House staff just really leaning in and being such an incredible team around mission engagement the last 2-3 years for this organization. I want to say that Open House felt really good that we were able to come into this fiscal year. So we run on a fiscal year, which means July 1st is Happy New Year, June 30th is end of the year for us. We came into this fiscal year for the first time in our history as an organization with reserves. So we came in this year with money that we were able to have in the bank. So we had a little cushion. And I can tell you as an executive director, it's a really good time to be able to say your organization has reserves, because we also came into the year projecting a loss in our budget for the first time since I've been here as well. And so I just want to say that in general, we're so grateful for the support that we've had of individual donors, foundation donors, corporate donors over the last few years, because part of what you want when you head into difficult financial times, and everyone's very aware, I think, of how difficult city budgets are this year, you want as a nonprofit to come into those years with some cushion. Hopefully you never touch the cushion, but you're in a much stronger position to do what we've done, quickly respond, buy the equipment staff need, ensure we're not cutting down program staff in a time where we need more and more program staff. You're more able to do that when you have that cushion. And so it's not just a question about how are donors responding right now, it's a question about how have donors responded. And I just want to say that we feel very fortunate that this organization has really grown in terms of our overall support in the last few years. In terms of the response specifically since COVID has happened, I will say that in the very beginning, March, April, I was really struck by the number of people who came forward, both donors, but also volunteers, right? Often as a senior organization, we actually see less support from donors and foundations than other organizations. And that's also true for volunteers. And in the very beginning, we saw a huge outpouring of support, which was incredible and wonderful. And I will say that as things have started to open and with what's happening politically, it has been harder to keep people focused on our work and what we're doing. So if you're having a good experience with us, please share it, shout it to the world, post it, just because there's a lot people are carrying. And as the city has been more open, people's attention on what's happening for seniors, I think in general has gone down. And I think that's a real mistake. So we're doing everything we can around that, but we are continuing to have good support. We're gearing up for our end of year fundraising. So towards the end of the calendar year, many nonprofits ask their donors and the people in the world to support them. And we'll be heading into doing that. And I'm hopeful we'll have a very positive response because we've built a really strong relationship with a lot of people who care deeply about Open House, but we'll need your help to make sure we get the word out and have that donor support. A number of the foundations, I will say, who fund Open House stepped forward with additional COVID response funding, either giving us additional funding or saying, hey, usually we'd wait to give you this funding until the fall, but we're going to give it in the summer. Or instead of writing a long request for money, you can send us 2 or 3 paragraphs. So I will say foundation funders in particular have really tried to be responsive to the moment that nonprofits are in and step forward and said, let's make this easy. Let's get you funding now. Let's help be there for you. And we're deeply, deeply appreciative of that, especially funders who have been with us for years and years and years, being able to do that. Let me talk about the technology question. So we are working right now both to be able to potentially purchase some devices, have some devices donated that would help give technology access. I will tell you that the harder challenge has been Wi-Fi. I think there's actually a lot of, there's a fair amount of interest and ability to get corporations and some of the technology companies to put devices right into hands. But the bigger struggle for me has been around how do we get people Wi-Fi? And so I think we're looking at some different models. There is low-cost Wi-Fi that's being offered in response to COVID. My fear, and I'll just be honest with you about this, if you sign up for low-cost Wi-Fi with a Comcast or a different provider, when they decide that sort of emergency period is over, you'll then see a big bill, and I don't want anybody in that situation. So again, we're trying to figure out, can we provide hotspots, which are little Wi-Fi boxes that you can put next to a pad and use? Can we do more with the city to have Wi-Fi hotspots around the city that you could go near your home and use? Can we get super Wi-Fi put on top of buildings? Can they do similar to what they're doing for the schools, where again, you have technology centers or places that you could go to gain access? So if anyone has and we're working with the city, and DOS is taking this on as well. But I think this question of Wi-Fi is really, in some ways, the harder issue than the devices themselves. We're also doing technology tutoring for people. So we have a number of volunteers who will spend time helping you get your device set up. And then we have some connections at Apple and are working with them on what would devices look like that already have a connection, and how could they support stuff. So we're looking at a bunch of different options, and we're trying to figure out what's going to work the very best. There's also a tech needs survey that's going to be in our November newsletter. So again, and you can actually cut that out and send it in, or you can fill it out online. And so we're also hoping to gather more information from you. What are you looking for? How many people do you know who don't have access? Is it the equipment? Is it the Wi-Fi? Is it the skills? What's getting in the way? So we're trying to get at that. I'm just making sure I haven't skipped anybody there. All right, I think I answered the donor question. Let's see. Anyone else who has questions, please feel free to put them in. I'm seeing there's a question about which corporations support Open House. And I'm happy to tell you a few off the top of my head, and I feel very nervous that I'll forget someone. So I will say that we have our yearly impact report, which is a report we do every year that gives kind of a summary of here's everything that's happened at Open House in the last year. And it also lists all of the donors, foundation, corporate, and individual, who have supported Open House in the last year. So make sure to, it'll come out on email. There'll be a link, I think, in the November newsletter, or it'll come out as a separate email. Or if for some reason you don't see it, feel free to drop me an email early November and I'll make sure you get it. But it'll list everybody. So if I forget someone, here we go. But I will say that recently Visa hosted a fundraiser for us and has been a consistent supporter. Our friends at Genentech are doing amazing support calls and program reaching out for folks, and are helping us with some of our technology needs. Gilead has been a funder who has supported some of our projects in one way or another, and is supporting, I think, every LGBTQ organization in San Francisco in one way or another. It's been more some building funds, so programming funds. Wells Fargo is a long time supporter of Open House, although if you're hearing me, it's been a little while. I will say that Onlock is both our partner in providing programming, but they also step up over and over again to do additional sponsorship dollars for things like the Pride bags, the holiday bags. They just come forward over and over and over again. When they're already in a business partnership with us, they go above and beyond. Allegra Home Care, I want to shout out. They were a big sponsor of the Pride bags in June. Salesforce just hosted a really cool panel with us on National Coming Out Day. And I want to thank, I see Luis de la Garza is here. Luis was one of our speakers on that panel. And I'm really excited about the partnership we have with them, both with their LGBT employees, but also they have a group for employees of different generations. And they came together to do a panel with us. I think it's really, really a fun opportunity for us. We have a lot of other corporate sponsors who sponsor Spring Fling every year, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some of them. So whoever wants to write me the angry email that I forgot you, I'm ready to receive it. And it's terrifying to look into my memory and see what's in there. Yeah. And feel free to put more questions in that folks want. I've gotten a couple of questions, not in the chat, but just offline, just generally people asking, how am I doing? How is my family and my kids who kind of are a part of the Open House community? Not kind of, they are a part of the Open House community. So I'll talk about that just for a minute, and then I'm happy to take more organizational questions. And my short answer is we're doing okay. My wife and I both work very full time. And Sarah actually started a new job during this crazy shelter in place time. And so it's a very, very difficult time. We are both working full time and the kids are obviously home. They're both in public schools here in San Francisco. And we don't have any grandparents in the city or in this, local who can offer support or help for us. So yeah, so it's been a very, very difficult time, and but we're doing fine. Quinn's managing to stay out of trouble, and Nova's doing amazing projects and learning. And I will say, for all of us, right? I think that this is such a time of recognizing what we miss. And it's a time for someone like me who spends a lot of time at work when when things are happening on site, to really see what my kids are like at lunch and at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And yeah, Nova joins a lot of our Zoom calls, as staff can tell you. But yeah, we're doing fine, and I appreciate people who have reached out and just extended their thoughts and support. It's a tough time for people who are alone. It's a tough time for families. It's a tough time for people who are partnered, people who are not partnered. No one wins the war of who's having the hardest time. And we feel incredibly lucky that we're surrounded by such a supportive community from all of you, from the board, from staff, are always patient when my kids interrupt a Zoom. That's what we all have to do right now, is allow each other a little bit of grace and a lot of love as we go through this really, really difficult time. So yeah, that's where we're at with that. Any additional questions or things that people would like me to share about? I also want to give a shout out. We do have staff on site every single day. Matthew Chimino, our director of operations, and Charity Horst, our operations manager, and Kevin O'Neill, who just joined our team, who's doing food coordination and program support. They're on site every day to make sure that the infrastructure and the support that staff providing services from home need have everything they need, and they've just been amazing. So just a shout out to my folks who are coming on site. You've been incredible. Huge shout out to the number of volunteers who have stepped in, who have been there to deliver medications when somebody needs it, to deliver food when someone needs it. It's just inspiring. It's the hardest time to be behind the scenes. And the behind the scenes work, you wouldn't be able to have phone calls, Zooms, food delivery without infrastructure and administrative folks who really get it and really care about the community. So just a shout out to them. And I want to also shout out Fair and Matthew McTire, who did technology support today, and who I did not prep in the way that I would have wanted to prep, and they were patient with me, and they'll probably wait to yell at me until we're done, which is very nice. And appreciate your hard work and patience too on the technology side. Richard Goldman has been an amazing volunteer who stepped forward to do extra tech. So people have just stepped forward in all kinds of ways. And it's really hard for me to not be able to hug you and thank you in person, and just feel very appreciative of that. Any more questions before we call it a day? I'm definitely set up, and we're in a place now where things are, we're rolling. We kind of have these operations in place. We're continuing to expand. We're continuing to bring on new staff. We're not shrinking in this time. We're expanding what we do. We're staying fully staffed so we can really reach everybody. And so my hope is I'm happy to do, more town halls for check-ins definitely in January 2021, as we kind of look forward from there. We're doing a lot around civic engagement as well. I hope that everyone, if you haven't voted yet, has a plan to vote. And want to say thanks to Ephraim and Jay and L'Oreal, who are working with a lot of our trans community on participating in the census and voting, and generally thinking about those efforts. So I hope you have a plan. Make sure to vote, please. Let us know if you need any support or information, and we're happy to be there for you. And if that's it, Matthew, just let me know if we have any. I'll just check the chat if we have any Facebook questions that I'm not seeing. And otherwise, we'll call it a day. I want to say thanks to everyone for showing up. Always happy to answer questions from here. Look forward to at least getting to say hello to many of you as we come and connect with you over the holidays. And just deep love and deep respect. And as I said earlier, we miss you. We are here with you. We are in community, even when we are not together. I'm holding you in my heart. This is very painful to be far away from you for me. And I know that's true for the staff. And we're just so grateful for who we are as a community, for what it means to serve all of you and be a part of your chosen family. So please be safe, enjoy a little bit of sunshine, and we will see you very soon. Okay, much love, everyone.